All right, welcome to part 4 of my series on why I love real estate. My name is David Green. I'm a real estate investor, a real estate broker, a loan broker, an author, a bunch of stuff when it comes to real estate. And what I want to share with you today is one of the reasons that I love real estate, the ability to be creative in building wealth. Now, real estate allows more access to creativity than almost any other venture outside of owning a business itself. It's also a lot less work of running an entire business like buying a fast food franchise or something like that. I've got several anecdotal stories that I'm going to share with you today about people I know that are in my world that built wealth through real estate in very creative ways, and hopefully I inspire you to be able to do something similar for yourself. The first is one of my best friends, my best friend, the bearded wonder himself, Brandon Turner. Brandon was the original host of the Bigger Pockets podcast when I took over, and he has since stepped out and built a behemoth of a company in Open Door Capital. Now let's look at Brandon's life and do a little case study on how he used creativity to help build himself a lot of wealth. One great example is what he did with Hawaii. So Brandon knew he wanted to move to Maui, but he didn't want to spend a ton of money to do it. He just had some hurdles with buying himself a really expensive house. Now, the way Brandon got over those hurdles was he bought a house that had 3 different units, an upstairs, a downstairs, and what they call an ohana unit, which was basically a separate structure that was its own house in the back lot of his yard. Now, Brandon was able to buy this $1.8 million property, rent out the downstairs, and rent out the ohana unit to significantly reduce the amount of money that he spends every single month to live there. In fact, when he's renting them out, he ends up paying a little bit less than what he used to pay to live in Washington State, getting to live in Maui. This is a strategy we call house hacking, and I will get into that a little bit more later in this video. But what you should understand is that Brandon found a way to let his property pay for enough of itself that he could live in Maui for less than what it cost him to live in Washington State. Also, Brandon brought a lot of us to Hawaii after doing that. So thank you, Brandon, for making that move. Another way that Brandon used real estate to build himself wealth was he took his educational platform on Bigger Pockets and he used it to build trust and credibility within a community that he was then able to leverage, which was part 3 of this video series, into getting people to let him borrow money to run his company, Open Door Capital. Now, what Brandon does is he takes other people's money and he buys real estate with it, and then he shares the profits with those people and earns them a return as well. So he was able to leverage his position on the podcast in a very creative way to build Open Door Capital, and then take advantage of leveraging other people's money to put into these deals so that he was able to build himself a huge empire. And eventually the guy's going to own $1 billion of real estate. Another friend of mine, Rob Abasolo. Rob is my new co-host of the podcast who took over after Brandon left. Rob does very creative things with real estate. He is known for getting tiny homes, very small properties that he is able to rent out to people as vacation rentals and earn a very high ROI on those deals. He also turned his primary residence into a wealth building machine by putting a tiny home in his backyard, by renting out part of his basement. Rob was able to get his Los Angeles real estate property, which is very expensive, covered by rental income that he made from letting people use parts of his house.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Rob Built. I'm your host, Rob Ert.
Now, those people saved a lot of money compared to what they'd pay in a hotel, and Rob saved a lot of money on his mortgage. This is a win-win-win in every single category.
A great success.
Rob has a creative mind, and he's applied it to real estate, and now he's able to reduce his largest expense living in Southern California, his mortgage payment. Now, Rob didn't stop there. He actually took this information he had and built a YouTube channel. Check him out. He's at Rob Built, ROBUILT, where he shows other people what he did and how he does it. He was originally a copywriter at a different company where he would write marketing material that he thought people would want to see. He took that skill set, married it to his skill set with real estate, and created this channel that now makes him enough money that he was able to quit his job teaching people how to build wealth through real estate, and then taking income that comes from it and investing it into other properties. Now, Rob and I recently bought a property together in Scottsdale, Arizona. At the end of this video, if you want to check out the property I'm talking about, check out this video right here. Now, Rob sees things from a creative angle, and that's one of the reasons that I got him as the co-host on the Bigger Pockets podcast, so he could share that creativity with the world. And when Rob and I get together and we start talking about different options, our creative juices start flowing. And that's one of the reasons I love real estate. Another case study is our friend Brittany. She goes by Investor Girl Brit on Instagram. Now, investor girl Britt got into the DIY space. She started doing a lot of her own rehabilitation work on her properties. And Britt would film herself doing this and show other people how she does the work. And lo and behold, her social media exploded. Britt was able to use this new social media following to find people that would let her borrow their money and invest it into other people's deals that she met. So Britt invests in a lot of AJ Osborne deals with money that comes from her following. So she learned how to fix up a house, leverage that into growing social media, leverage that into raising money, and then leverage that into investing that money into other people's deals and asset classes that she hasn't even had to learn. That is a very creative way to build wealth through real estate. Another great example is Mindy Jensen. Mindy hosts the Money Podcast on the Bigger Pockets Podcast Network. And Mindy is known for doing live-in flips as well as being a real estate agent. Mindy wrote this book, How to Sell Your Home for Bigger Pockets, where she explains what real estate agents do to sell homes. By taking her love of real estate and getting her real estate license, she earns additional income by representing buyers and sellers in the Denver, Colorado area. She's also known for doing live-in flips. That's where Mindy would buy a fixer-upper property that's a little run down, live in it, and then fix it up while she lives there so she doesn't have the hard money carrying costs that a lot of flippers have. She's also not under the pressure that they are. And the house is where she's living, so she was going to be making a mortgage payment anyway. She might as well be making it on a house that she's fixing up. When the house is fixed up and 2 years have passed, she doesn't have to pay capital gains anymore. Mindy sells the house, earns herself a nice little profit, and moves into another property to repeat the live-in flip-in. Now, this is very creative because Mindy can take advantage of very low down payment loan options by buying a house that will be her primary residence. She also reduces a lot of the risk that flippers have when they're trying to churn out houses and the project goes over budget or too long. She also keeps her living expenses lower by not having to make a housing payment for where she lives and a housing payment for the house that she's trying to flip. And lastly, she avoids capital gains by taking advantage of the primary residence element in the Internal Revenue Service code when it comes to avoiding capital gains taxes on investment property. Mindy has a very simple yet successful method of using creativity to make money through real estate. And then you got the godfather himself, Mr. Josh Dorkin, the man who created Bigger Pockets, the company. Josh was actually a failed real estate investor. He bought real estate in LA, not quite sure what he was doing, getting some bad advice from some friends, and then he ended up losing that property. Josh was so irritated that there was nowhere he could go to find answers when he needed help that he started Bigger Pockets, a forum where people could go to ask questions about real estate. That forum eventually grew into a blog and then a podcast. Brandon Turner joined and helped grow the company, and the two of them blew Bigger Pockets up into the behemoth that it has become.
Okay, this is like take 25. I can't get this thing right.
This is one of the most creative things I've ever seen. Somebody who did bad at something and flipped that around and made the biggest business in the entire real estate space. If Josh could do that, any of us can find a way to use creative juices to grow something big. Now, there's a couple strategies that I think I want to share with you that are also very creative. The first is house hacking. This is the idea, like I mentioned with Rob and with Brandon, where you own a house, but you rent out part of it to keep your payments lower. There are many, many, many creative ways to do this, but the point is you get to own instead of rent and not have to pay the full value of the house every month, which allows you to save up money to buy more real estate. Another is the idea of a short-term rental. Now, what Rob did with his property in Los Angeles is he didn't rent it out to a tenant who paid every single month. He rented it out to people that were going to stay for a couple days or maybe a week, a short-term period. And in doing so, he was able to get them to pay more than they would normally pay. He basically turned his backyard into a hotel. And by combining your property with short-term rental income, you can actually generate significant revenue that will lower your housing expenses. So during the COVID shutdown, Rob rented out his property to traveling nurses that were coming to work in the hospitals here, which helped save a lot of lives and helped make him some money because they needed a place to stay. This is obviously very creative and the way that we need to be thinking about real estate in a market like this when it's so hot and housing is so expensive. And then you've got me. I tend to buy real estate that I look at that people miss something. So the last house that I put under contract, should be closing very soon in Moraga, California, was a house that no one else wanted to buy. It was listed for $2.2 million, and it sat so long without getting offers that the sellers wanted that they actually took it off the market. This was real estate trash, an expired listing. Now, one of my team members found this property for me that was over 5,000 square feet, but had a very funky floor plan. And I went and I looked at it and I realized I could change the layout of this floor plan to make this a much more engaging and enticing property. And I was able to go in there, communicate directly with the sellers, earn their trust, put it under contract. And I am now fixing this house up to be several different units that many different people can stay in. A similar situation to Rob, traveling nurses, traveling corporate executives. I'm going to host masterminds in this place where everybody has a big, warm, safe room to live in, where I can impart wisdom on people, give them a good experience, and generate revenue from people coming to stay at this property. I was able to find it because I wasn't looking for something that was already ready. I was looking for the diamond in the rough. I was looking for treasure where other people saw trash. And it's that vision that allows me to express my creative nature in earning money through real estate. How many times do you look at a property and say, no, I wouldn't like it? What if you let your creativity flow and say, what would I have to change so that I would like it? How is an element of this property not being used well where I could use it differently? And that's all that I want to encourage you in today. You've got creative juices, let them flow. It's one of the reasons I love real estate. There are so many ways that you can exercise creativity within this asset class. If you're thinking a little bit differently than you were before, I did my job. If you'd like more of this, please consider checking out my private mastermind. You can learn more about it at davidgreenmastermind.com. In that group, we share information just like this of what all the members are doing to make money through real estate, how they're looking at opportunities, and what they're doing to structure their deals. I'd love for you to get more involved with that and start applying some of this yourself, building your own wealth and becoming part of the community that I'm creating. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please consider sharing this with somebody else, especially if they're not the most creative person and maybe they need a little nudging in that direction. And if they are a creative person, let them see this video so that they can understand how they too can be using those same juices within our asset class. Leave me a comment below to let me know if you think I missed anything that is really relevant to the creativity within real estate, and check out part 5 of my video on why I love real estate investment regarding scaling.